Tonight, Michael Cohen is asking the Supreme Court to revive his lawsuit against former President Donald Trump. The former attorney and fixer asking the High Court to let him sue his one-time boss for allegedly retaliating against him as he promoted his tell-all book that told a lot about his former boss and the former president. It was critical of him. I want to get straight to the source tonight with Michael Cohen, who is joining me tonight alongside his attorney, John Michael Dougherty. It's great to have you both here. Michael Cohen, of course, is the host of the Mea Culpa podcast and the Political Beatdown podcast, and also the author of the book Revenge. So Michael, just you and I know this, but to get people up to speed, you sued Trump, you sued the former Attorney General Bill Barr and other federal officials in 2021. Your lawsuit was for damages, and it was dismissed and upheld by an appeals court. But obviously, you're hopeful that this is going to clear a hurdle for the Supreme Court to get in front of them. As you know, Michael, it's difficult for Americans to sue federal law enforcement officials. So I just am curious, tell me why you think and why you're hopeful this one will succeed.
Well, in what world is it acceptable that a citizen should be unconstitutionally remanded and that you cannot sue the government for unconstitutionally violating your rights? It just doesn't, it makes absolutely no sense. On top of that, the thing that all of the viewers today have to be very, very careful and they have to be very cognizant of is what happens now post the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity. Caitlin, what's to stop the president, or God forbid a million times Donald Trump, if he wins the White House again, from turning around and saying, you know, I didn't like, Caitlin, what you said, and send SEAL Team 6 to your home? They end up knocking down your door, begging, tagging you, and sending you off, as he says, to Guantanamo Bay. And you don't even have the right now to defend yourself. All I'm asking for by the Supreme Court, give me my day in court and let the documents speak for themselves.
Yeah, and Michael, obviously, you know, we just dealt with an entire trial where you were there, you testified, you were in that situation. This is obviously very different because you're going to the Supreme Court. But I do wonder, you know, given the makeup of the Supreme Court, given the way we've seen them ruling on certain decisions, the trend line has kind of been against this ability to be able to sue federal officials. I think we've only had really like 2 instances since the 70s where they've been successful. So I wonder, you know, realistically, how you are viewing this and what precedent you think it sets if you're not successful here.
So this is a first-in-time precedented case. We've never had a citizen of the United States incarcerated because they refused to waive their First Amendment constitutional right. I mean, I am the first, in essence, political prisoner held by my own country, again, because I refused to waive a constitutional right. And I believe that it's incumbent upon the Supreme Court of the United States to hear this case and to remand it back down. You see, the interesting thing, Judge Lyman called this case profoundly violent in terms of the fact that he had to deny the case and to grant the summary judgment motion. In fact, even the Second Circuit Court of Appeals turned around and they could not understand what is the precedence to prevent a government official, in this case specifically a president or a willing and complicit attorney general, from ever doing it again. And the answer is they didn't have one. And the only way that we could ever know, because the rule here, as put down by Justice Clarence Thomas, is unless it is of the most unusual circumstance. And so I posit to you, and again to your listeners, what could be more unusual than the President of the United States weaponizing the Justice Department to go against a political opponent or a critic and incarcerating them because they refuse to waive a First Amendment constitutional right? I can't think of one.
And John Michael, you're the attorney here representing Michael Cohen in this. You know, we've had Bill Barr sitting in that seat for a few interviews on this show. When it comes to, you know, if the court does take it and they're asking for evidence tying, you know, Attorney General Bill Barr to it, obviously Michael Cohen says that he believes he was part of this because he was the sitting Attorney General. How do you tie that to him? What does that look like in court?
Right. So, Caitlin, it's important to understand the stage of the litigation. And thank you for covering this story, by the way, because we really do believe that this is an incredibly important moment in American history. This story. It's an unprecedented situation. Judge Alvin Hellerstein found that Michael Cohen was incarcerated in retaliation for his refusal to be silent.
It was a really remarkable retribution coming from that judge.
Judge Hellerstein said he has seen nothing like this in his decades on the bench. When Michael Cohen brought the instant lawsuit that's sort of underlying our appeal now, Judge Lyman dismissed the case because of this incredibly narrow path that the Supreme Court has left open to sue federal officials in their personal capacity. But in dismissing the case, he said he was disturbed by the profound violence his dismissal does to Michael Cohen's rights. So what we have asked the Supreme Court to do is to apply its precedents, take that narrow path that it has said remains in the most unusual circumstances where there is a clear need for a deterrent remedy. And this is what Michael's referring to when he's saying what could be more unusual and what could be more in need of deterrence in a free society governed by a government with limited powers than the act of federal officials incarcerating public officials or public critics for their refusal to be silent.
We will see how this goes. It's great to hear both of you and your view of this. We'll see what the Supreme Court decides, of course. John Michael Dougherty, great to have you. Michael Cohen as well. Thank you both for joining tonight to talk about this case, and we'll follow it very closely.